What's going on, guys? Dr. Thompson here with Exemplify Health Center, your Wellness Way affiliate right here in Yorkville, Illinois. Happy Monday evening, guys. Hope you guys had a great day. It's been an awesome day for me. It's been a long day as well. I am 48 hours into a fast right now. Before everyone asks, should I fast? I don't know whether you should. I know I've done a video on it, on the difference between men and women and fasting. But I am doing it right now. I challenged a friend, said, hey, you got to do the hashtag Mandate Burpee Challenge. If you decide you're going to do that, then I will fast with you, and I'm doing it for 6 days. I'm a third of the way done. Woo! So I have withheld from food and only had water and minerals for the last 48 hours. And not too bad. I'm doing okay. So I think my mental clarity will be okay to be able to do this live video for tonight. And so, guys, I'm going to talk with you tonight about an interesting topic, all right? There's a lot of buzzwords out there, even in the natural health field, you know, of things like adrenal fatigue, leaky gut, mast cell syndrome. So there's all of these different, you know, buzzwords that we love to latch onto because we love a diagnosis. We love to label ourselves. But I'm going to ask you this question because I did a talk about a week ago for a wonderful organization that were very natural health minded. And there was about 250 people there. And I asked this question. I said, you know, how many of you suffer with this? And a lot of them raised their hand. And then, well, how many of you suffer with having low energy? And it was about 3/4 of the room that raised their hand saying, yes, it's me. I suffer with low energy. And just remember, guys, this is even people who are naturally health-minded, okay? So the question I want to ask you guys, and guys, you're going to find a lot of value with this, and if you do find a lot of value with this, guys, please make sure you please share this video, because the chances are, if you are watching right now and you're struggling with energy, okay? If you're struggling with energy, and you're watching this and you're naturally, you know, natural health-minded, chances are that your friends and your family that might not be, are probably suffering just like you are, if not even worse. And so please make sure that you share this video. So you can tag someone on this video. You can share it to your timeline. Whenever you guys do that, I'm always I'm grateful from the bottom of my heart. Thank you guys so much for your support. So I'm going to ask you guys this question. Do you have adrenal fatigue, or are you just inflamed? Okay. So many times, and in fact, this has been within the last month, just the number of new patients that we've had where their primary complaint or their number one complaint is that they're suffering with low energy. And yes, they're suffering with some other issues that are going on. A lot of it has to do with weight loss resistance. A lot of it is chronic pain. Yes, headaches. And a lot of it is gastrointestinal issues and bloating. But ultimately, what it's leading to is it's leading to them not having any energy. In fact, I'll ask this question all the time to new patients because we not only want to be able to improve their labs and objectively be able to see that there is improvement, know that we're moving and heading in the right direction, but ultimately at the end of the day, if we don't help a person feel better, and if we don't help a person get their energy back, which is usually what they want, then, you know, that's one of the big things. So yes, we want better labs, but we also want you feeling better at the same time. And in fact, I had a young woman today who was struggling with chronic pain, was struggling with migraine headaches. And I said, hey, if, you know, the chronic pain was gone, if the headaches were gone, and you woke up the next day and they were gone and you knew that they weren't going to come back, tell me what you'd like to be able to do better. And she looked at me with 100% sincerity and she said, I want to just be able to play with my kids. So, you know, at the end of the day, if you don't have the energy for your family, if you don't have the energy for your spouse, if you don't have the energy for your kids, boy, I tell you what, you better start working on your life. Better start working on your health, because the people who are the most important to you, they're not getting the first fruits. They're getting just the scraps that are falling off the table. So let's ask this question: adrenal fatigue, or maybe you are just inflamed. Let me give you a scenario, because a lot of times people say, my adrenals are fatigued. And I'll say, well, how do you know if they're fatigued or not? And I want to give you an example, because we test a lot of people in regards to blood sugar. Even better is A1C. Even better than that is testing their insulin levels. And so they may be a type 2 diabetic, but their pancreas can still secrete insulin. So even after years and years and years of abuse, the pancreas still can secrete insulin, that hormone. It's just it's not hearing it anymore. But even after years of being diabetic and the doctor is actually trying to stimulate more insulin production and doing all of these things, they haven't gotten to the point yet of being what you would know as pancreatic fatigue. It takes a lot of abuse before finally you have pancreatic fatigue. And in fact, at that point, you would consider yourself a type 2 and a type 1 diabetic. So a type 1 diabetic no longer has the ability to be able to produce insulin, and now you are experiencing pancreatic fatigue. But when you think about this whole concept of adrenal fatigue, are you really at a point where the adrenals can no longer be able to produce cortisol, DHEA, pregnenolone? Can they produce, after menopause, some of your estrogens, your testosterone? Can they actually do that? And the only way to really know for sure is to actually be able to test. But if someone comes to me and they don't have, energy, if they still are able to secrete those hormones, it's not necessarily that they have adrenal fatigue or some kind of adrenal collapse. It's just that their adrenals have down regulated as a response to stressors. Okay, so hopefully that makes sense. So very few people are considered adrenally fatigued. Yes, I have seen that before. Yes, sometimes it is an autoimmune type of reaction. Yes, sometimes you can help the adrenals to perk back up. Maybe they're missing vital nutrients, vitamin C, they're missing B vitamins, and things like that are necessary for the production of certain adrenal hormones. But I want to ask you guys this question. So I want you to think about it. Let's think about this from a different perspective. And when I talked about this a week ago for this wonderful group, the light bulb went on for them, okay? And let me give you guys a scenario. So let's say you wake up and you're sick. You have a fever, you have chills, you have body aches and pains, and you have absolutely no energy, okay? So let's say you were diagnosed with COV, et cetera, et cetera. And so let me ask you a question. If your immune system is working on trying to handle an infection, the immune system needs to go up in order to handle that infection. And then what you're going to see is that your adrenal glands and your cortisol output is going to go way down. So think about it. So if the immune system needs to go way up, the adrenal glands are going to counteract that and they're going to go way down. So how are you going to feel? You're going to feel inflamed. You're going to have joint pain. You're going to have a fever. You're probably going to have a headache. You're going to have a lot of symptoms of inflammation that are going on. Heck, you may even have some issues with diarrhea. You may have some issues into the lungs. Your immune system is handling an infection. Cortisol starts to go down as a result. So how do you feel? When you're sick, you don't have any energy. So if this child wakes up and says, "Mommy, Daddy, I'm not feeling good. I don't have any energy," you wouldn't take her to the natural health doctor to diagnose her with adrenal fatigue. You would say, "Hey, you know what? You're handling an infection and you need to rest and you need to sleep, and no, you're not going to have a lot of energy." So just think about it. Maybe, just maybe, what you're dealing with is you're dealing with an immune response and you're dealing with more inflammation, and you don't necessarily have adrenal fatigue, okay? One of the questions people always ask me is they say, why am I so sore? Why am I so stiff in the morning? I'm going to show you actually why, okay? So I want you to think about it. What if, Dr. Nate, what if my hormone imbalances? What if my sluggish thyroid? What if my autoimmunity? What if my adrenal fatigue, my leaky gut, my fibromyalgia, maybe my depression, my anxiety, my ADHD, all of these labels that we love to have some kind of diagnosis, even if it's natural, what if all these labels, and hopefully you can see this, what if they're really the result of the body adapting to stress and to inflammation? I want you to think about it. What if these right here aren't really considered illnesses? What if they're just adaptations? See, we're helping you try to look at this from a different lens. Because if you are thinking that, oh my gosh, I need to fix my thyroid, I need to fix my hormone imbalances, I need to be on a bioidentical, I need to, take some iodine, I need to take some more selenium, I need to take some more things, to try to pick up my thyroid a little bit more, or maybe I need to do something in order to lower inflammation for my autoimmunity and take a bunch of turmeric. Maybe for my adrenal fatigue, I need to take more licorice. Maybe for my leaky gut, I need to take, some whatever it might be for leaky gut. What about my fibromyalgia? Do I need to take a bunch of, B vitamins, things like that? What about for my depression, anxiety? Do I need to be on St. John's wort? Do I need to be on more California poppy? Or maybe with ADHD, maybe some passion flower would help. And guys, all you're doing is you're just taking this diagnosis, instead of choosing a drug route, what you're choosing is a non-drug route that just replaces this for that. So what if all these things, like I said, are the result of body adapting to stressors, and they're adapting to inflammation? What if it is not an illness as much as it's the body trying to adapt as much as possible to keep you alive? That's how we look at things from a different perspective. So I'm going to make a huge statement, a bold statement. This may not sit well with a lot of people, but that's okay. You're welcome to disagree. But what if most of your health issues, what if they really just involved mental stress and chronic inflammation? Guys, this is true for so many women, because who stresses out the most? Men or women? Women. Who stresses women out the most? Men. I knew you'd say that. But what if most of it was actually due to mental stress and due to chronic inflammation, okay? So I want you guys to think of something right now. I want you to think of your cortisol. So cortisol is stress hormone. When you get high levels of cortisol, you have a heightened level of awareness. This is trying to mobilize blood sugars. Energy starts to go up. Cortisol is not necessarily a bad hormone. We always think about, I got to knock my cortisol down. I got to knock my cortisol down. And yes, your cortisol does go up during heightened times of stress, okay? During heightened times of stress, including even mental stress. Cortisol will even go up too in order to try to mobilize blood sugars during some kind of fight or flight, or for people who are insulin resistant, you'll see that they have a real big problem with, with a tons of cortisol output trying to regulate the blood sugar. So cortisol is, if you just think of it as increasing during mental stress, and so if you think of this, if your immune system needs to go up, so let's say you're trying to handle an infection. Let's say you're trying to handle a viral infection, a bacterial infection. It could be mold. It can be, literally the body causing an inflammatory response around the gastrointestinal system, even in response to food proteins. So if that immune system starts to go up, cortisol is going to go down, and guess how you're going to feel? You're going to feel tired. It happens in opposition to one another. Increased inflammation, you're going to have a lower cortisol response. Now think of this though. What if the cortisol levels go way up? Let's say that you're mentally stressed, huge amount of mental stress. Cortisol goes way up. Or maybe you're over-exercising and you're demanding more cortisol than what you normally need due to over-exercise. Yes, we are doing the hashtag Manic Burpee Challenge, but yes, there are people who over-exercise. There are some people that say, stop exercising. Why do I know? Because look at their labs, and we see that their cortisol levels are through the roof. And if that happens, then their immune response is going to go way low. So that's why there's a connection between increased mental stress and having a lowered immune response. And when there's a lowered immune response, you're much more likely to have an infection from some kind of pathogenic virus or some kind of opportunistic virus or some kind of opportunistic bacteria. And in fact, guys, my opinion is this. Every virus and every bacteria is opportunistic, meaning it will not hurt you unless you are doing something in order to damage the normal immune response. Because what we were given is more than enough, guys. This is why with COV, et cetera, why can 1,000 people get exposed to the virus and 999 are fine, but one has a really bad day with it? And the reason why, it has nothing to do with the virus. It has everything to do with the strength of the host. So guys, maybe the reason why you have such low energy is because your immune response is way up, trying to handle different inflammatory triggers, okay? Now, here's what we do when we say, oh, I'm so tired, And guys, every person that I see that come in and they're struggling with energy, and, obviously there's some basics that you need to make sure that you're handling, like you're sleeping enough. I mean, that should be obvious. But there's people who come in and say, I sleep for 14 hours every single day. I'm still tired. And so, do I have some kind of adrenal fatigue? So normally what we do is we'll say, well, maybe I need to take some ashwagandha or maybe some licorice, maybe some adrenal glandular, maybe some DHEA in order to get some more hormone production in my adrenals, maybe some bioidentical hormones. I'm going to go to the natural doctor. They're going to do some bioidentical, derived from plant botanicals. And guys, I will tell you this. I see so many women screwed up by taking long-term bioidenticals because you have no idea what kind of pathway it is taking when you take these things indiscriminately, okay? Maybe I need to take a little bit more iodine, or maybe some more B12, or maybe I need to take a little bit more iron. And guys, it's not to say that these things are necessarily bad for you, because I can tell you what, I have recommended ashwagandha, licorice, adrenal glandular, DHEA, not very much, never bioidenticals, iodine occasionally, B12 a lot, and some kind of food that contains high iron quite a bit. But guys, the only reason why we do that is to dig them out of a hole while we start to get to the reason why it happened in the first place. Guys, I want you to think about it. If you are taking any one of these and you've been taking them for a long period of time and you're still not better, guys, problem's not with your adrenal glands. The problem is that you are probably very inflamed and the adrenal glands are just responding to those inflammatory stressors. Let me give you an example. Hopefully, guys, you can see this okay. Here's a woman who comes in. Now, when we do a Dutch test, we look at their 4-point cortisol. Normally what you should see is you should see that their cortisol levels should stay within these black lines, okay? That means that there is a normal cortisol output, guys. Just remember, you can't try to lower cortisol as much as possible. You need it. You need a normal level of cortisol. Can't have too much, means you're stressed, lower immune response. But if you don't have enough, then chances are there's a heightened immune response and the adrenal glands are down regulating in order to, in response to the heightened inflammatory triggers. So when you look at this woman, you can see she wakes up exhausted. She perks up just a tiny bit, afternoon exhausted, and at night absolutely exhausted. So here's a woman who probably needs to go on an IV of caffeine just to get her back to tired, just to start her day, just to start at tired. This woman was absolutely exhausted. Now, I want you to think of this. So does she have adrenal fatigue? Well, look at actually her cortisol output, almost in the tank, her free cortisol, obviously in the tank as well. And then look at her hormones. Holy cow. You can see even at menopause, completely diminished progesterone, estradiol. And you look at this and you're like, what on earth is going on? Does this woman have adrenal fatigue? The answer is no, because when you look at this, you got to say, man, is this woman, is she really handling some kind of infection that's going on? And guys, when we tested, there was all kinds of gastrointestinal inflammation, gastrointestinal infections that were going on, but that actually didn't even get to the reason because she had so many problems with her lungs, so many problems with her kidneys, and it was so many problems with brain fog. It was so systemic. So I thought, man, if this is systemic, then there's got to be some kind of exposure to something. Lo and behold, when we did a little bit of digging, the reason why her adrenals were at such a low level is that she was suffering with mold, okay? So here she had constant exposure to mold, inability to be able to clear it out, and the mold toxicity was absolutely hammering her immune system for such a long time. And so her body was doing everything it could to try to stimulate an inflammatory response to try to clear out the mold. So guys, she didn't have adrenal fatigue as much as it was a response to chronic inflammation. So here's another woman. She comes in, she's got no energy whatsoever. So energy is in the tank, tired all the time, doesn't want to do anything, but she actually had terrible inflammation, especially in the gastrointestinal system. So guys, one of the things that, man, it will wreck a woman so badly, and I see so many women who have this that we're meeting with, is that they get their gallbladders out, okay? So you get the gallbladder out, and the doctor says, doesn't give any instructions on what to do, just eat normally, you can do whatever you want to do. But the problem is that once you lose that gallbladder reservoir, then you will always have a problem with being able to break down and emulsify and absorb fats, which means you're going to be fatty acid deficient, you're going to be low in vitamin D, and on top of that, you're going to have a lot of undigested fat that's going to tear, just absolutely create chaos as it goes down into the intestines. And once that happens with a bunch of undigested fat, the body says, whoops, this isn't very good, let's get rid of it. So she had had her gallbladder out years before. Doctors didn't put her on any kind of gallbladder replacement to help her absorb her fats. And so she suffered with chronic diarrhea and what's known as dumping syndrome, like diarrhea all the time. And in fact, she said, I actually, my goal is not to have to wear a diaper when I go out. That's how bad that it was. So when you look at this, she had 35 count it, different food allergies. What does that mean, Dr. Nate? What does it mean when you have a food allergy? It just mean that you just can't have that food and it just so happens? I want you to think of it. If the barriers in the small intestine, if they begin getting damaged and they start getting inflamed, they start getting compromised, you're going to let a lot more foods leak through the intestines to be exposed to the internal environment of the body, which then requires an immune response to any kind of foreign protein. So when you look at this, she was leaking a lot of different proteins through, which, yes, you would call it, intestinal hyperpermeability. So a lot of inflammation was taking place around the gastrointestinal barrier. Guys, even when you verify this with food, you can see high in fecal fats in her stool, which means she's not breaking down her fats because she didn't have a gallbladder. High secretory IgA, which is basically an antibody that sits around the gastrointestinal barrier, and it's just the bouncers in the bar, and they help to inactivate things before they can become internal within the body. You can see massive dysbiosis, which means overgrowth of opportunistic bacteria, a decrease in growth in things that are supposed to be there. You don't catch these bugs, guys, is when you have a poor environment with stomach acid and with bile or lack of pancreatic enzymes, you are setting the stage for having what's known as dysbiosis going on, okay? So, guys, at this point, do you really think that a probiotic is going to help her a ton? It's not, because she's so inflamed and she's not even absorbing what she's supposed to. So you can see these right here are actually doing pretty good, but you can see as a result of losing that gallbladder, massive inflammation, and she's got all of these overgrowths of bacteria. Why? Because it's just a better environment for certain bacteria when you don't have enough stomach acid, pancreatic enzymes, or having enough bile acids. So when you look at this, no energy, but her issue was having a lot of gastrointestinal inflammation going on. Inflammation up, cortisol down, lack of energy, okay? Here's a woman who came in, absolutely no energy whatsoever, chronic weight gain, chronic pain, couldn't lose weight no matter how hard she tried. You name it, she tried it. Weight Watchers, keto, zone diet, paleo. And people ask me all the time, like, well, what diet do you recommend? And I say, actually, really none of them, because the only thing that matters, first and foremost, is whatever you're putting in your mouth has to be non-inflammatory. It doesn't matter at that point if you're not first and foremost focused on inflammation. So we had a guy, who just came in. He's like, started working on lowering the inflammatory process around the gastrointestinal system. He's like, this is nuts. I lost 7 pounds in 1 week. I'm like, well, that's awesome. I really think that's great, but it's not fat. It's just you're losing inflammation around the gastrointestinal system. So this woman, she came in, here she was in her 40s, and she already had what was known as high C-reactive protein. This is a cardiac marker. This is one that doctors don't do. And because they're not doing it on your CMP and your CBC that you get every single year, because they're only looking for fires, they're not looking for any kind of causes. And this is the reason why, your Uncle Joe dies of a heart attack and had perfect blood work, when they went to the doctor. He didn't have perfect blood work. They just forgot to actually measure the things that really matter, okay? So her C-reactive proteins should be actually around 1. Hers is at 6.31, massively inflamed. And here's the thing. Doctors don't measure it because there's no drug in order to lower C-reactive protein. So after about 4 months, you can see it goes down to 3.3. after about 11 months goes down to 1.80. So actually saw a 4 to 5 time decrease in C-reactive protein. Now it just so happens that she feels better. Energy is actually starting to go up. The reason why energy is starting to go up is because inflammatory markers are going down. So I want you guys to know that. Is that why do you have such poor energy? Think about it. Am I in fact inflamed and my adrenals are just responding? So here's someone who also doesn't have any energy as well. And in fact, here's what's interesting is the only time that she would get energy back is when she would go on massive anti-inflammatories and immunosuppressants. Well, Dr. Nate, why would that be? Because when they would knock out the inflammatory response, then of course the cortisol levels would start to go back up. This woman has, basically colitis, inflammation of the colon around the whole entire large intestine, okay? So you can call it whatever you want. So if they are describing an autoimmune reaction, they'll call it Crohn's disease, or they'll call it colitis, they'll call it irritable bowel syndrome, whatever they're gonna call it. Guys, this is all really geared around the inflammatory response, either in the small intestine or in the large intestine. So here's what's interesting is when you look at the stomach gas, you look at all of the gas that's taking place, holy cow, whenever you got a lot of black on your x-ray, that is a marker for having a lot of gastrointestinal inflammation. Well, they already knew that she did because she had quote unquote colitis. And in fact, even if you look over here and you're looking at, here's her back, here's her belly, this is an outline of the spine. When you actually see this, you see all of this inflammation here. But what's interesting is you see how bloated the belly is. So you see how much the belly actually sticks out. And in fact, it was almost like she was pregnant, even though she was very thin. There's so much inflammation that is going on. So what do? Does she need licorice? Does she need to stimulate her adrenals? No. What she needs is start handling the inflammation and start figuring out why her gastrointestinal barriers have gotten so damaged that they're now so inflamed and is causing so much immune activity around that to downregulate her adrenal glands, okay? So guys, it all comes down to this. I can't believe I got to keep hammering on this. I'm still going to get a bunch of messages, and I love the messages, by the way. I can't answer all of them. But we're still looking for natural solutions. And really what you want is you don't want to change your lifestyle. What you want is just, instead of taking a medication, just plug in an herb instead and keep living the same destructive lifestyle that got you there in the first place. Guys, so yes, we will do those things, but the ultimate end game is that you change what got you sick in the first place. So how do you do it? What causes it, guys? There's only 3 different reasons. Let me say that again. There's only 3 different reasons. It can't be anything else. First one is mental stress. The second one is having chemical inflammation. The third one, guys, is having physical stress, physical inflammation. Where? Around the spine and around the nerve system. That's it, guys. You want to see some pretty interesting articles about cortisol and about spine inflammation, about spine injury. You look at that and you actually will see what happens after someone has a massive trauma that happens to the head and happens to the neck, and see how they will have massive cortisol dysregulation taking place. So this is why, guys, is that when someone is sick, we're not going to say, well, let's just focus on the chemical. We're saying let's focus on all of these 3 things. Let's start removing every single stressor that is creating an inflammatory response, because your body can only handle so much stress. And so just think, once that stress bucket gets to a certain amount, the body cannot handle that, and you start going into a disease process. It will adapt as best as it can, but as soon as it can't adapt, now you're actually looking at pathological tissue and things like that. And that's why I say, what's the protocol? I'm like, find where the stressors are and then work like crazy in order to remove them from the body as quickly and as thoroughly as possible. Because the quicker you do that, the quicker that you lower inflammation, now and only then can your body start to heal. You guys understand, your body will not heal, it will not grow, it will not regenerate tissue unless you first handle the inflammation. This is what's so amazing, guys, is that inflammation is really just the first part of it. You feel better, but you're not healed. You just removed what's causing you to feel bad, but now you have to start repairing and start regenerating and start feeding those areas in order for that tissue to be able to start to regenerate and start to heal. So hopefully, guys, remember what we said. Is it really adrenal fatigue, or am I just inflamed? And the answer is that chances are you are just inflamed, and it's time to start looking at the reason why you are inflamed in the first place, which leads me to this, guys. Coming up tomorrow night, make sure that if you haven't yet, if you're from the Yorkville area or surrounding areas, we probably can still get you in. I'm not for sure, but try to call our office, 630-553-6149, and see if we have any room available at our Approach to Inflammation talk. Guys, inflammation is the spark that leads to every single issue that we're talking about. Weight loss, yes. Cancer, yes. Infertility, yes. Thyroid disease, yes. Arthritis, yes. Type 2 diabetes, yes. Autoimmune conditions, yes. Hormone imbalance, yes. It is all tied around inflammation. And the better you are at identifying what the sources are and start removing those, guys, the body will not adapt into here, and it will adapt into health. So hopefully, guys, you enjoyed this and this makes sense to you. And if it makes sense to you too, please make sure you share this video with other people. Help them to give them a different perspective when it comes to inflammation and their energy and their immune system. And if that made sense to you, it's going to make sense to them. And I bet you that they will thank you thoroughly for passing along this information to them. We had a lot of people who asked me too, Dr. Nate, when are you going to do another immune system panel? I will tell you this soon, very soon. In fact, we might be getting the results with testing back probably within a week to 10 days at the most. And when I do that, I'm actually going to put together like initial and then like corrected immune system numbers, and then post, first, post, second, and then another immune panel to give you guys a gauge of what's happening in this individual's immune system. And we're going to test a little bit sooner than what I had anticipated, only because this person's not feeling very good. Goes to show you, right? So we're going to use testing. We're going to use the immune panel. We'll look at some inflammatory markers and to see exactly what's going on with this individual. I did ask them, hey, are you going to get the BOOSTR? And they said, absolutely not. I would never in a million years, just because of what's happened, how I feel from doing this. What is this person suffering with? Most importantly, they're suffering with breaking out in canker sores. They're suffering with eczema, breaking out in rashes. And on top of that, they have absolutely no energy. So what's happening right now? Inflammation is way up. And then this right here, their cortisol levels are going way down. So it makes it really hard to be able to work out and be able to exercise, be able to enjoy life. So guys, again, if you're from the Yorkville area, surrounding areas, make sure you call our office, 630-553-6149, and ask if we have any room available. I haven't checked yet, but we'll try to get you in if you can. All right? Or send a message on this page for that. This is an in-person event. All right? All right, guys. Thank you so much for joining me. I hope you have a great rest of your week, and we will see you guys very soon.